Hello, and welcome to this lesson all about writing your reflective task. Now, the key aims today are we're wanting to understand what type of things we need to do in order to meet the success criteria for your first folio piece. We're also going to have a look at some examples of work that I've put together just to talk you through what I'm expecting. So first up, the folio. Like last year, you're going to have to produce a folio for English, and it is worth 30% of your overall grade. Now in English, it's quite easy because each 1% is 1 mark. So because you've got two pieces of work that you need to submit, each one is worth 15 marks or 15% of your overall grade. One of them is broadly creative, and this reflective piece will be the broadly creative piece that we do. And the other one is a broadly discursive piece, and we'll talk more about that later on in the year. Reminder though, these are marked by the SQA, not by your teachers, so we can give you one round of feedback with a bit of detail for you then to go work away on it and get it as good as you can so that when it gets marked by the SQA, you're going to get the best grade possible. Now, a bit more on that. Now, what we expect is next March, these will be sent off and they get scanned in so that the markers are marking them on computer. Now there's reason for this, they're checking for plagiarism. Now plagiarism is the check to make sure that you have not copied this piece of work from somebody else. Now if you get found to be plagiarizing your work, then you instantly lose your grade for English, and you can actually lose your grade for all other subjects as well. The piece of work that you submit will be marked by at least one SQA marker. More often than not, it will be marked by two people so that the score that you're given is the most accurate and best one that it can be. So these two folio pieces out of 15 are then graded together, mark out of 30, and that's 30 marks towards your overall grade. Now that means that if you put as much effort into your folio as possible, you can be going into the exam knowing that you've got a good amount of grades already, and so it takes a bit of pressure off you for that. So here I've got the marking scheme that the SQA use in order to work out what grade you're going to get. Now you can see there are columns ranging from 15 to 13 all the way down to 0. We're not going to focus on that kind of bottom end marks, but we're going to start in the 9 to 7 category. So that one in the middle. This is where we usually think of a piece being graded as a C, the 12 to 10 is then a B, and then 13 to a 15 is what we'd expect from an A. So let's have a look at that one to begin with. So the content, a strong attention to purpose and audience. The people marking it are English teachers who have done a minimum of 5 years at university, so the level of language that you're using should be reflecting that. That if the person reading it has got a high sophisticated vocabulary, you have to be producing that as well. They want strong creative qualities. Now, what they mean by that is it doesn't need to be imaginative, but your use of language does need to be creative. We don't want cliches. We don't want aspects that are just simply have been seen too many times before or going over things that have been done lots and lots of times. We're wanting a new way of looking at things. We're wanting a skillful command of the genre. And what they mean by that is if it's a reflective piece, we have to see it meeting not just the personal part, not just describing the setting possibly or the scene or creating the character of you through the writing, but also we have this reflective aspect where you're evaluating and assessing what you've gained and what you've learned from this. Now, the thematic concerns which are skillfully introduced and developed, these are the key ideas that you're going to be discussing within your reflective piece. You want to make sure that any idea that you're bringing to it of why this is such an amazing text or why it meant so much to you as a 12-year-old, that has to be explored in every main paragraph. If it's not there, you cannot be getting that category. Now this one's really key for this piece of work. The ideas, feelings and experience are explored with a strong degree of mature reflection. Now they are wanting you to think about what you have gained or what you understand fully and more so about yourself as a result of watching or reading or playing the computer game when you were 12 and how that compares to you now. And also we want this strong sense of your personality and individuality coming through. I should pretty much be able to read these and work out who it is that's writing them based on the language that you're using, the tone that you're using, whether it's serious or humorous or a mixture of both, because they're wanting to get a sense of you as much as possible. We then think about the style. Because it's English, we want to show off the language skills that we have as much as possible. And so these have to be used all the way through. And it's almost, you want to ensure that every main paragraph that you're writing has some form of linguistic feature or key language feature or technique found within each one for effect. We want confident and varied expression, so we're not wanting repetition of words throughout it, unless it's technical language and you can't avoid it. You should be using words and phrases all the way through, not repeating, that have an effect, that create additional meaning for the reader. Things like symbolism, word choice, tone and mood really help to do that. And then we want a structure that is logical and sensible and shows this idea that you've gone through and planned it. Now, if you haven't completed the planning stage first, you should probably stop this video now and go and do that. So the task, writing a reflective piece that you chose, whether it's a text or a short story or book that you read, or a computer game, film or TV program that was your favourite when you were 12. Now, when you're planning this and writing it, you can bend the truth a little. They're not ever going to be able to check that 100% of what you're saying is accurate. So you can actually say that this was far more meaningful than it might actually have been. But the important thing to note is that your word count is between 850 words and 1,300. You cannot go over 1,300. If you do, you will lose marks from your overall piece. Now, the reason I'm saying 850 words, there's no actual minimum word limit, but we know from the years that Higher's been running that in order to get an A, you must be looking at producing a minimum of 850, 900 words in order to do that. It's really tough to get an A at that. It has to be incredibly well written, but it is possible. Now, for reflective writing, what are the things I'm going to be looking for in your piece? What's the success criteria? So plan, you've got to do that. Use a variety of imagery and sound technique to create the scenes. If you're describing where or when you watch this, create that setting and use imagery and sounds to do so. So things like similes, metaphors, onomatopoeia, personification, whatever it is, use a range of techniques. You must include reflection and evaluation of what you learned or gained from the text. Now, evaluation is an assessment or a judgment of how well something works or what could be done to improve it. And you must have that all the way through. The reflection comes from you then assessing how much this had an impact on your life and what you learnt or gained from it. Different sentence types, different sentence starters have got to be used, along with an effective use of word choice in order to create tone all the way through your piece in order to show whether or not or how meaningful this was to you. We want a range of punctuation for effect. Now, if you couple this with the sentence types and structures, you might be using long, complex listing sentences and then compare and contrast them with a minor sentence or a one sentence paragraph, things like that, in order to make it more interesting and effective for the reader. A good one to do is try thinking about shifting the tone or the mood within the narrative, and I'll be explaining a bit more on that when I look at the example I'm going to give. Other thing is you have spent 4 years in secondary English learning all about linking words and phrases, and you must use them between and within paragraphs. So things like furthermore, in addition, however, consequently, these are all expected. Now, this is Higher English. We cannot say firstly, secondly, thirdly, fourthly, and list it like that. Nope, we need to be more sophisticated than that. And finally, we've already talked about remembering the audience. You must be mindful that because it's an English teacher that's marking it, they're going to expect a level of language that is appropriate for Higher. So please, please take that on board and use sophisticated, interesting language all the way through. Because, well, this is Higher English. You have to show off your vocabulary and skills in English to remind the marker that you are an incredible writer. Now, what I've done is I had a thought back to when I was 12 years old, all those years ago. And I thought, actually, when I was 12, what was the film that really, really meant something to me? Now, I was 13 when Jurassic Park came out. And so when I was a bit younger, I watched my very first 15, and that was Terminator 2 Judgment Day. So I thought back to the introduction and I thought, well, if I start with the thing that I remember most about that film and hint at that and just describe that a little bit, that will hook the reader. And it's the scene where the robot, who is made of liquid metal, passes through a set of metal bars. So that's where I've started. To me, special effects have never been that special. Watching Jason and the Argonauts as a child, I loved the battles between men swinging swords at apparitions and skeletons. But as I aged, so did they. The juddering plasticine models were now not terribly scary or realistic, and I could see where the real and Play-Doh swords didn't quite meet, let alone clash. Don't get me wrong, I still have a sense of joy when watching the sublime creations of Ray Harryhausen, but once you realise that it's just a plasticine model, it's difficult to get past that. However, all this changed when my older brother told me about a film his friend had lent him and that I was not to tell my mother of what we were about to watch. We sat awestruck as a metal being really, and I mean really, passed through metal bars before it continued its battle with another robot. Terminator 2 Judgment Day was the most incredible thing I'd ever seen as a 12-year-old. So here in this introduction, what I've done is I've talked a little bit about what I remember special effects being when I was growing up. Jason and the Argonauts is a film from the early 1970s, and the special effects, they're great fun to watch, but you can tell very much that they are plasticine models. So this was the first thing that I would want to introduce. It would then make logic, or it would be a logical next step, to then, in my first main paragraph, to talk about the special effects and just that, the cop passing through the metal bars. A fantastic bit of CGI and one of actually the earliest uses of CGI that was so effective, and I really vividly remember it. Yep, Jurassic Park did it really well, but Terminator 2 did it first, and I would say better. So moving on to the main paragraphs. What I was thinking about is if I came up with 6 reasons for the for the main paragraphs, including special effects, action sequences, a genuine fear of the antagonist, the villain, the soundtrack, the shock of seeing nuclear war, and also a wariness towards AI, those would be all the main things I would talk about in the main paragraphs. Now, within each one, I'd be aiming to write about 200 words. So if you think 200 words times 6 puts you quite close to that 1,300 word limit. It then means your introduction and conclusion don't need to be that long. They just need to sort of get to the point quickly. And also it means that if for any reason, if I go over the word limit, I can just simply take out a main paragraph. Or if one paragraph is shorter, I've then got enough that I'll still be hitting around about 1,000 words. So here, this I was going to say would be my last main paragraph. And you'll notice it's my last main paragraph because I've chosen the word ultimately to start it with. That's my linking word. And it's also evaluating what I think is the most important thing about that film when I watched it as a 12-year-old. So ultimately, what haunts me about this film is the central premise. The fact that one day technology could destroy us all. It has instilled a sense of wariness that any time I see a headline about a breakthrough in artificial intelligence, the hairs on the back of my neck stand up as there is a flashback to the Skynet destroying the world in a nuclear Armageddon. Now, chances are your Alexa in the kitchen is not plotting the downfall of man, but you never know. Terminator 2 showed the extreme version of what could happen in this dystopian future where robotic drones slaughtered innocents without any remorse, and it was little more than 12 years after that film that I read news reports about drones being used in real airstrikes. The film's ability to be prescient today remains one of the reasons that it is still such an incredible film. Okay, drones in the real world are piloted by or from some dull grey portakabin on an airbase and not guided by AI, but driverless cars, drone taxis and drone deliveries no longer sit in the pages of sci-fi novels or on screen, but are and will be a part of our very real lives. So in that main paragraph, I'm thinking about what actually the thing that scared me the most about that film was anytime I watch it now, I'm reminded about the use of AI because it predicted that AI would take over and destroy the world. It's a dystopian sci-fi after all. But then thinking, how does that connect to the real world today? And actually, it's quite easy. The use of drones in the film, it's then something that we're seeing now within real warfare. And that is terrifying. So for my conclusion, what I thought about were those 6 main points that I came up with to write about for the main paragraphs. then what, and summarizing them before going on to say what is the main reason of why I love that text. So here's this conclusion. You have to remember, you imagine that I've written 6 main paragraphs. This is then the final one. I'm not going to start with in conclusion. I'm simply just going to start by recapping the main things and possibly how it has changed in the 29 years since I watched that film. When I watch the film now, I am still amazed at how well the film looks. The special effects that were cutting edge in 1991 still manage to be convincing enough that they don't impede your enjoyment of the film even after 29 years. The action sequences still leave you breathless. Robert Patrick's portrayal of the T-1000 robot is chilling, and even though I now see it as a bit over the top, you can forgive it because any of the subsequent sequels prove that he is by far the best antagonist. Okay, the soundtrack seems a little dated, but I can't fault the fact that it made me appreciate a genre of music that I would never normally listen to. Nuclear war has never been so terrifyingly realised, and the shock that is created during the most memorable sequence in the film hits hard each and every time, and that fear of my phone listening to everything that I'm saying and plotting to kill me all stems from this incredible film. Yes, okay, Edward Furlong is annoying, and yes, there are some parts that haven't aged so well. But I know that if I'm about to go to bed and I notice it's about to start on TV, I'll be up till 1 a.m. to watch it, regardless of whether I have school the next day or if it's the 100th time that I've watched it. So there, what I've tried to do is think back to what that film meant to me when I was 12, then recap all the key points that I would go through. And you'll notice I'm using semicolons in a list, just listing all the things, sort of summarizing the main paragraphs before making that final couple of sentences where I acknowledge the fact that there are things about it that haven't aged so well or don't quite work, and as an older person I realise are just a bit annoying. But then I talk about the fact that I will still stay up to watch it, how much that film means to me, and that's what we're trying to put across. Okay, that's the end of this lesson, so hopefully that has taken you through the planning process to the writing process and given you a bit of an insight into what I'm actually looking for within this piece. If there are any problems, please let me know and message me on Hangouts. Thanks.